Invest in Brazil Infrastructure, Turkey edition, held by Apex Brazil in partnership with the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Infrastructure, and Economy, in addition to the Brazilian Development Bank, BNDES, the Brazilian Association of Infrastructure and Basic Industries, ABGIB, the Foreign Economic Relations Board of Turkey, DEIK, and the Turkish Contractor Association, TCA. I am Roberto Scotto, Head of Investment Department at Apex Brazil.
Ben de Apex Brazil'dan katılıyorum, Apex Brazil'dan ve ismim de Sergio.
The fourth chapter in a series of 5 digital events on infrastructure held this year. The next one will focus on the port segment and will be held on the 20th of October. The purpose of today's event is to highlight the Brazilian-Turkey commercial relations, in addition to presenting the advances made in Brazilian legislation and detailing the infrastructure opportunities that are open to private capital in the country. The transmission will be in English with simultaneous translation to Turkish. At the end of the first panel, the speakers will answer just one question that will be selected from the audience. If you have questions for them, please send them to our Zoom chat or to the following email, ibi@apexbrasil.com.br. In today's event, we'll have the participation of important people such as the Vice President of DEIK, Turkey, Brazil, Mr. Şahin Selik, the Ambassador of Brazil in Ankara, Mr. Carlos Martins Seglia, the Ambassador of Turkey to Brazil, Mr. Murat Yavuz Ates, and the Consul General of Brazil in Istanbul, Ambassador Paulo Roberto França. In addition, we will have the participation of Mr. Burak Talu, Vice President of the Turkish Contractors Association, the Special Secretary of Investment Partnerships Program, Marta Cellier, and the Superintendent of BNDES Investment Partnerships Structuring Division, Cleverson Aroeira, among others. Now, for the opening remarks, I invite the President of Apex Brazil, Sergio Segovia.
Thank you, Roberto. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this event promoted by Apex Brazil. I greet all the attendees with a special welcome to Ambassador Carlos Martins Seglia, Ambassador of Brazil to Turkey, Ambassador Murat Yavuz Ateş, Ambassador of Turkey to Brazil, Ambassador Paulo Roberto França, Consul General of Brazil in Istanbul, and Mr. Şahin Selik, Vice President of DEIK, Turkey-Brazil Business Council. It's an honor to open the fourth edition of the Invest in Brazil Infrastructure. The first 3 editions were a remarkable success along the investors' audience from 50 countries. Turkey is a country deeply admired by Brazilians. In addition to its rich history, it has shown admirable economic, technological, educational, artistic, and social growth in recent years. We believe that the consolidation of bilateral relations requires constant attention, work, and frequent updating on Brazil and Turkey's economic matters. I'm proud to present the work of the Brazilian Trade and Investment Promotion Agency, Apex Brazil, in the attraction of foreign investments to Brazil. Today, we will highlight the outstanding opportunities arising in Brazil's infrastructure sector, with a portfolio of over 150 projects that represent concrete possibilities for the allocation of private investments in the next months and in 2021. Despite the current global pandemic, the agency was directly responsible this year for facilitating $4.07 United States billion in investments in Brazil. Our mission is to increasingly encourage investors to discover the opportunities offered by Brazil, covering all their needs and offering support, accurate connections with public and private players, as well as precise and quality information. Brazil is huge in size, in population, and in terms of opportunities for investments. So it's important to highlight some information about the country. According to the index of the North American consultancy A.T. Kearney, released last June, Brazil returned to the list of the 25 most reliable countries for foreign direct investments. Only 3 emerging markets are in this list: China, the United Arab Emirates, and Brazil. 2 factors have mainly boosted this confidence in Brazil: the approval of the pension reform and the federal government's efforts to expand privatizations and concessions. This recognition allows us to stay optimistic even in the face of the pandemic situation. Likewise, we are aware of the domestic scenario as well as the global context. UNCTAD and the OECD have forecast a reduction of up to 40% in worldwide FDI, which since 2005 had been above 1 trillion United States dollars. In Brazil, the central bank estimates a drop of 23.6% in 2020. However, we rely on history. The country has prevailed over all other previous crises and has managed to keep growing steadily. Brazilian institutions have great resilience to face challenging periods. Certainly, these are difficult times, but the maintenance of international investment flows is fundamental for our economies. Developing countries such as Brazil and Turkey offer strategic opportunities. Closing my remarks, I'd like to point out that this event is a wake-up call to strengthen business relations between our countries and significantly impact the Brazilian economy in the years following the COVID-19 crisis. In other words, the private investors attending this event can certainly expect to benefit from substantial new opportunities in Brazil in the years to come. It's key more than ever to be ahead of time. Keep in mind that Apex Brazil is at your service for any need you may have for safely landing in the country. Please access our newsletter with regulatory information on infrastructure, agribusiness, renewable energy, health, and other sectors, as well as cross-cutting changes. The publication is written in English and is available monthly on our website. Our doors are open to facilitate your investments in Brazil. Invest with confidence, invest with Apex Brazil. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Segovia. I agree with you that here in Apex Brazil, we are very committed to strengthen the trade and investments ties between Brazil and Turkey. And this webinar will contribute to this goal. Now, to address aspects related to the bilateral commercial relations and opportunities to intensify the flows of Turkish investments to Brazil, we will connect to the representatives from both countries. We will start with the Vice President of DEIC, Mr. Şahin Selik. Mr. Selik, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Good day to everybody. And first of all, of course, let me begin the salute to Ambassador of Brazil to Turkey, Mr. Carlos Seyla, and Ambassador of Turkey to Brazil, Mr. Murat Yavuz Ateş, and Consul General of Brazil in Istanbul, Mr. Paulo Roberto Camilla, and all the other participants. I wish you all good day and good Benibar. In the meantime, my President of DEIC, Mr. Nail Opek, wanted very much to be here with us today, but unfortunately, and of course unexpectedly, he has to attend a funeral. So on behalf, I will be addressing, on behalf of Dave, I'll be addressing today to you all. And of course, I wish you all happy, healthy and happy days ahead. Now and from now on, it's an honor to be here with you all, with my friends in South America. Of course, briefly, we're going to evaluate the business and investment opportunities today. But before that, let me start with a brief introduction of DEIC. DEIC is a Foreign Economic Relation Board, is a business platform that has been continuing its activities on a voluntary-based private sector membership for 35 years. We continue our work with, and of course, the understanding of business diplomacy, and of course, with the help of and support of our Trade Minister, Excellency, Mrs. Rusar Pekcan. We have under our roof 146 country-to-country based business councils all over the world. And our Turkey-Brazil Business Council is one of them. Now, I believe it is one of the right moments and times about constructing a more diversity, sustainable and fruitful cooperation between our countries to further strengthen the existing relations. We are all aware of the bilateral trading volume between our countries. I believe it is still far from its potentials. It should be our business community's responsibility and aim to bring it to more desired levels. Therefore, we greatly value your support and collaboration for achieving this goal. At this moment, as you know, today we are here to talk deeply on infrastructure field. So allow me to give some numbers and figures about the situation of Turkey's infrastructure sector. Turkish contractors have signed more than 10,000 projects worth of almost $405 billion in 127 countries since 1972. We are ranked second after China in the list of the world 250 largest international constructors. Our constructors have carried out 59 projects worth of $2.3 billion in 8 countries in the Americas, including United States, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, Brazil, Cuba, Venezuela. Also, there are some points that we should address mentioning to improve our economic relations. One of them is, as Turkey proves itself in the infrastructure area all around the world, Turkish contractors can undertake all unfinished projects in the construction sector after the Odembrecht case. If the financial issue, as long as it's resolved, our contractors can do it successfully. And we also know very well, Brazil aims and is open to collaboration within third countries. As strong Turkish business world, we are ready to work together also. Portuguese-speaking countries like Mozambique, Angola, Ghana could be our first steps towards that. Honorable Ambassador and dear participants, we are all speaking about globalization for years. It was true, it was the fact, but nowadays, especially during the pandemic, we are much more speaking about the globalization. And we are talking about more the concept of accessibility rather than the concept of which are the main parameters of logistics. In the recent unprecedented times, we have realized the significance of market diversity and supply chain. We firmly believe that those who are capable of adapting to difficult condition and those who can manage to keep the supply chain, who can give significant confidence to counterparts, will lead the change for a better world and be the winner. I would like to finish my speech with a Brazil saying, if I can, of course, depois da tempestade vem a bonanza. Yes, the storm comes after the calm. And also we believe that after hard times with coronavirus, we will continue to work strongly together more than before. And I thank you all for arranging this useful webinar, and it is our pleasure to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Selik. Of course, our countries together will overcome this storm that we have faced during this pandemic. And there is so much space to work together in trade and investments. Now, I invite the diplomatic representatives from both countries, Ambassador Murat Yavu Ates, Ambassador Carlos Martins Seglia, and the Consul General, Ambassador Paulo Roberto França. The floor is yours.
Would I be the first one as the Turkish ambassador? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to say hello to everybody, the President of Apex, Ambassador Carlos, Consul General, Vice President of DEIC, Şahin Bey, and all the distinguished contributors to this event. First of all, I would like to thank you for organizing this event, because I believe that there is a very big potential between Turkey and Brazil in the economic field, both in terms of trade and also in terms of investment. If we look at the existing figures, we see that we are unfortunately below that potential. For example, if you look at commodity trade between the two countries, the percentage reflecting our bilateral trade is less than 1% for each country, both in terms of exports and both in terms of imports. So if you look at services sector, again, it's very low. And if you look at the investment side, it's also very, very low. Of course, this is not a good situation, and we must do something about this. Now, Turkey and Brazil, we enjoy very good relations. Historical relations really go back centuries, and at present we enjoy very good relations. Brazil is our strategic partner in Latin America, so we have to reflect this to our economic relations. I visited APEC, I think almost a year ago in 2019, and we had some ambitious plans for the future that we were going to work on. But unfortunately, the COVID situation rendered most of our projects impossible. Now I think we are going to overcome the situation that was created by COVID sooner or later, in any case. and the opportunities will be there for all of us. So this event, especially with regards to infrastructure projects in Brazil, is very interesting. As was said before, there are many opportunities in Brazil, and Turkish companies are active all around the world. They have finished many successful construction projects, but they also have successfully operated many projects as well. So not just in terms of doing the construction, but also operating the projects, Turkish companies could be quite successful. I think the most important point here is that we should bring our business people together. If our business people are able to get together and discuss their projects, I think we can get some very good and useful results. As the Turkish embassy in, sorry, I'm having problems. Yes, as the Turkish embassy in Brasilia, we are always at your service and we are always ready to help you. I am also sometimes in touch with the Brazilian embassy in Ankara as well. So I congratulate you one more time for this event and I wish you all success. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Murat. And now please, Ambassador Carlos Martins.
Yes, good morning, President Sérgio Borges, Apex. Good afternoon, Ambassador Murat Yatesh. Good afternoon, my dear friend and colleague, Ambassador Paulo França, Mr. Vice President of DEIC, Science League, Mr. Murat Kalu from TCA. Good afternoon. I hope this webinar finds all of you, as I can see, but your families in very good health. And I also hope that you'll have a propitious webinar. And my message will not be long, so that we can start working as soon as possible. Brazil, as you know, is a country, as the President Segóvia said, is a huge country, more or less 11 times Turkey. It's very big. It's depending on the exchange rates between dollar and real, it's between the 8th and the 10th economy in the world. But on the other hand, it is a country also of contrasts. Some regions showing development rate close to, for example, the Western European countries. On the other side, there are some regions that still lack basic infrastructure like ports, airports, transport, and sanitation sectors. In order to correct these contradictions, the federal government of Brazil established investment plans aimed to the most needed sectors and recently approved a regulatory framework that supports and guides actions in the area of basic sanitation. Even though there are companies in Brazil, well known, used to large infrastructure projects, due to the magnitude of the intended works and the amount of actions and investment required, the Brazilian government is opting to attract foreign investment. And here comes Turkey. Turkish contractors present in more than 120 countries, Vice President of DEIC said 127, are recognized as efficient and capable of offering competitive prices. In addition, they have the experience of developing projects under the most varied conditions and dealing with unforeseen circumstances, solving potential setbacks never before contemplated, but which often occur in any mega project. Turkish companies are also known as investors and operators of projects, especially airports and roads, and I am a witness of that. In several countries, always with efficiency and a high degree of competitiveness. In an environment with strong growth potential and closer ties between two countries at similar stages of development, such as Brazil and Turkey, which are increasingly present internationally in their respective regions and in the global stage, and which do not have common disputes, I would like to invite not only contractors, but Turkish companies operating in all sectors to work and invest in Brazil, a country ready to welcome you as friends and where business opportunities can be limitless. And I do agree with what Ambassador Ateş said. There's a lot we can do a lot more. I was ambassador of Brazil before coming here to Malaysia. Well, Brazil-Malaysia trade, and I've told this to the president of Turkey, is higher than the trade between Brazil and Turkey. And this is not normal. So I think that we have a lot of room to grow. And as Ambassador, again, Yatesh talked about his own embassy. The embassy of Brazil in Ankara is open to you all. Please contact us. I will try to visit you, every one of you, as soon as possible, as soon as this COVID allows us. And as a final statement, you know, as people say in the United States, we cannot spare a crisis. So it's time to work with both countries, important countries, economically important. So there's a lot of room. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Carlos Martins. And now, please, Ambassador Paulo França.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Dear President of Apex Brazil, Mr. Sérgio Segovia, dear Vice President of the EIC, Mr. Shahim Sailek, I take the opportunity to greet the President through you. Please convey my regards to him. Dear Ambassador of Turkey in Brazil, Ambassador Murat Yavuz Ateş, dear Ambassador of Brazil in Ankara, my good friend, Ambassador Carlos Seglia, dear participants, I'm very happy to be here with all of you on the occasion of the event Invest in Brazil Infrastructure, Turkey edition. There is a consensus among experts that infrastructure is a primary consideration when advising companies where to invest in capital-intensive projects. This webinar is a great opportunity to share with you the vast portfolio of investment opportunities available in Brazil. We believe there is high potential to be developed in partnership with the robust construction sector of Turkey. I would also like to avail this opportunity to thank the support of the EIC. The efforts of the EIC in bringing together the private sector in Turkey through events, meetings, and activities gives an invaluable positive contribution to the business environment in this country and the possibilities of partnership between Brazil and Turkey. Brazil is the 5th large country and the 9th biggest economy in the world, as my dear friend Carlos Seglia has just said. In 2019, our GDP reached around 1.8 trillion US dollars. In spite of the adverse economic climate prevailing around the world, Brazil has been able to tackle some persistent problems that used to affect our economy for many years. Inflation rates are in record lows, below 4% and stable. Basic interest rates are also down to 2%, a level that many considered unlikely just a few years ago. It's a vibrant, democratic, and peaceful country with a huge consumer market and an industrial people, as in Turkey. The trade between Brazil and Turkey has been constantly increasing over the last years. In 2019, the trade volume reached $3 billion US. Nevertheless, as everybody has mentioned, and Ambassador Atesh has mentioned particularly, this number is still far below from its potential. We have to work on it. There is a significant number of Brazilian industrial investment companies in Brazil, made by some of our fine Brazilian international enterprises, such as Votorantim, VRF, that has bought recently Banvit, Maxion, Metal Frio. On the other hand, important Turkish companies, such as Kordsa, a subsidiary of Sabancı Group, have important investment in Brazil. Investors who are willing to invest in Brazil can benefit not only from the market access to all Mercosur member states, but also to several other countries that sign preferential agreements with Mercosur. There is a great potential in the partnership between Brazil and Turkey. I convey here, and I agree totally, the words of my dear friend Ambassador Carlos Segli and Ambassador Atesh in this regard. The participation of Turkish companies in the infrastructure projects in Brazil, besides being important investment opportunities for them, will strengthen our friendship ties and create new options for enhanced cooperation. I express my congratulations to Apex and all those who contributed to organize this important event. And I extend my greetings to all participants of this important webinar. Thank you. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Paulo França. For our audience, it's very important to hear the perspectives of diplomats from both countries. And we realize that Turkish companies have big potential to invest in Brazil, not only in constructing, but even operating different projects. So count on Apex to help you for investing in Brazil. To start the first panel, which will address the perspectives of infrastructure in the economic development of Brazil, with the presence of Fábio Rogério, Director of the Department of Partnerships at the Ministry of Infrastructure, and Igor Rocha, Director of Planning and Economics at the Brazilian Association of Infrastructure and Basic Industries, ABDIB. I'm pleased to invite Mr. Burak Talu, Vice President of the Turkish Contractors Association, who will be our moderator. Mr. Burak, please, the panel is all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Roberto. I'm very happy to be here on behalf of the Turkish Contractors Association, and very happy to moderate this first panel of Invest in Brazil Infrastructure. And I welcome my panelists, again, Mr. Fábio Rogério and Mr. Igor Rocha from Ministry of Infrastructure and ABDIB. I will tell a little bit about the Turkish Contractors Association. Already you heard a couple of words and numbers from my colleagues, so I will not try to repeat myself and go fast over the Contractors Association. And then we will have a question and answer kind of discussion with my colleagues. So if I can share my screen, and if somebody can let me know if everything is going okay. Is this all going good? Or somebody do like this?
Yes.
Okay, very good. The Contractors Association is the prominent, I mean, the main body for the Turkish contractors that we unite under. About 70% of the works done in Turkey and more than 90% of the works in international is done under Turkish Contractors Association and their members. And in very roughly, you saw some numbers. We did about the last, almost 50 years, more than $400 billion of work worldwide. And I'll give you some breakdown very quickly. In Eurasia, what is mostly Central Asia, Russia, we did most of the works, almost 46%. Middle East is 26%. Then comes Africa. Big part of Africa was historically North Africa, and recently we got into more Sub-Saharan Africa. We have Europe, which is mostly Central and Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia. And as you see, Americas is very small in the pie, but we hope to increase this amount significantly. And in terms of activities, as you would see, after the wall came down and the Russian Federation and the CIS countries opening up, we did a lot of work in Russia, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and historically in Turks did a lot of work in Libya and our neighbor Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Qatar recently, one of our best partners with Turkey and other countries. And by terms of activities, Turks did a lot of infrastructure and evolved into more technologically advanced projects in the last maybe 15, 20 years, but still big, big road and bridge and tunnel builder. Big part of our works are like that. We have housing, commercial, we have airports recently. Very, as you know, the largest airport in the world is also a PPP project done by Turks in Istanbul. We have power plants, industrial plants, railways, metro and high speed, and petrochemical and tourism facilities, social cultural facilities. Annually, we reached more than $31 billion of work internationally as Turkish contractors. Depending on the cycle, we went down a little bit, and then of course 2020 is an interesting year for I think all of us. We will probably finish it by 10 billion or so, which we want to get back soon to $30+ billion very soon. And top markets I already mentioned. In the top 250 international contractors in the ENR list, we have 44 companies this year. China has 74, mostly these state-owned companies. And by terms of volume, we should be around, I think, 7 in the world. Coming to activities in Africa, as I mentioned before, most of the activities was in North Africa, Libya, Algeria, Morocco, and recently in the Sub-Saharan Africa, we started doing a lot of work. I'll skip these faster because then there is more projects coming up. In Middle East, mostly our neighbor Iraq and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and all the other Middle Eastern countries we work with. And in Eurasia, as I said, Russia, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, almost all the CIS countries we work in. In Southeast Asia, this is more, Afghanistan and Pakistan lately. And lately, India has been one of the places that Turks, especially metro and tunnel contractors, started working. And we have some small projects in some countries, including, I believe, an island in Maldives, a hotel project. In Europe, it's mostly Romania, Poland, Bulgaria, our neighbors, very close in Central Eastern Europe. And even we did some work in Switzerland and Sweden and other countries. In Americas, as our friend mentioned, we did work in Venezuela, Cuba, some Brazil, Bahamas, Chile, and others. And some projects in the United States. In terms of projects, if you look at project types, infrastructure, airports is one of the biggest strengths of the Turkish contractors. Recently, this Kuwait airport, the $4.3 billion project, is done by Limak. Ashgabat airport, Turkmenistan, Polkova airport. These kind of airports in Ukraine also, we did about $30 billion of airports Turks have built. Railways, like the Poland metro, I think third project is already being built. The famous Ethiopia Railway, which was EPCF, financed as well by Yapı Merkezi and Open the Gate for Africa, is very important project. Dubai subway, two different Turkish companies, Yapı Merkezi and Gülermak, they were working in two separate projects in Dubai, in the railway. So total more than $20 billion of work in railways have been done by Turkish companies. Roads, one of the oldest professions, about $54 billion of work have been done. Turkmenistan, the highway, the St. Petersburg Causeway, kind of many different projects have been done here. Ports, the Duqm port in Oman, Morocco, and Turkmenistan, the Turkmenbashi port is the $1.5 billion project. I think Çalık did it. Almost $8 billion of work have been done. Power and petrochemical plants is also specialty work. We have some companies who specialize only on petrochemicals and some only on power, like Enka, Gama, Tekfen, kind of Çalık, Ustay. So almost $33 billion worth of energy projects have been done and transmission lines, and in the petrochemical, $19 billion of petrochemical plants have been done. Water works, water and hydropower and irrigation works, such as this Azerbaijan dams, water transmission project in Saudi Arabia, 1.2 billion, and the Jordan conveyance projects are worth to mention, about $26 billion. Recently, in Africa, it's very popular also, this convention centers, congress centers, hotels, which is also financed by Exim Bank. I think Summa did it, Equatorial Guinea, Senegal projects, and Qatar, Vaitur did a very famous convention center which is growing. Stadiums and sport complexes are big specialty projects because of their structure and steel construction. Almost $10 billion of complexes have been built, such as the Olympic Village in Turkmenistan, Sochi Winter Olympics facilities, and the Cameroon project by Inigun, and other projects. So these are some strengths of the Turkish Contractors Association and the members. Of course, I leave some juice to our next panelist after we finish, because it's about PPP, and our friend Mr. Eyüp is going to be talking about that. But I believe he will correct me with numbers, but there is almost $150 billion of PPP projects have been done in Turkey and abroad by Turkish contractors, including the Osman Gazi Bridge in Istanbul and the third bridge and the highway, connecting highway, which is the longest suspension bridge with roads and a railway inside in the world, and the airports, many projects like this. He will give more information. So Turks are overall EPC, PPP, contractors, operators, and suppliers. Also, not to mention, not to forget the Turkish materials, construction materials manufacturers is one of the strong, the engineering side and also the manufacturing side, the strong strength of the Turkish companies here. And the Turkish contractors' objectives is, of course, TCA's objective is to increase the competitiveness between, in the national and international markets. We promote and defend the interest of the members. We encourage cooperation and support among the members. We build and enhance strategic alliances with public-private bodies, both within and outside Turkey, such as the one we are doing here. We did a cooperation with OKAJI, the Japanese Overseas Contractors Association. We did partnerships with, in terms of financing, like US Exim Bank, Turkish Exim Bank, and many other federations. We also promote professional standards and business ethics. So if somebody is a member of TCA, that means they have to have a certain mindset and ethical background and the track record of a company. And we advise the government agencies on legal, economic, and technical issues. And we raise public awareness on industry-related issues. These are, we do, public relations, lobbying, training, R&D for the industry, information management, getting together, and sometimes we also do some nice, get-together parties. We are a member of SICA, we are the Confederation of International Contractors Associations, a member of FIEC, the European Construction Industry Federation, EIC, the European International Contractors, World Water Council, and FOKIC, the Federation of Contractors for Islamic Countries. So in a nutshell, the strengths of the Turkish contractors are extensive partnerships and experiences. We have rich experience in diverse markets, cost-effective service at international standards, and we are willing to take risks and we have the competitive spirit, ability to take initiatives, and reliable in general. So we are very happy to work and to get to work and get to know our Brazilian counterparts, friends, and try to do work not only in Brazil and Turkey, but also in other countries as well. Let me stop sharing the slide for the TCA, and I'm very happy now to welcome our panelists. First of all, I will start with the Minister of Infrastructure, Mr. Carvalho, if I'm pronouncing right, Carvalho. Please tell us about the Brazilian economy in general. What's the importance of infrastructure in the Brazilian economy? And as a Ministry of Infrastructure, what are some measures that you're taking to promote the infrastructure development and to attract investments in the country? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be speaker today. Special thanks to APEX. Thank you to the ambassadors, panelists, and our audience. If someone could share the screen with our presentation, thank you. It's an honor to be here representing the Minister Tarcísio de Freitas to present the Brazilian concession program, the biggest of its kind in the world, with more than 150 successful asset auctions since 2016, and still more than 50 billion of dollars of investment for future projects. Next, please. Talking a little about why invest in Brazil. It's important to note that, yes, and how you probably know, that Brazil is the 50th largest economy in the world, and 9th biggest economy, corresponds to the biggest consumer market in Latin America. Next. Okay, just to have some aspects in perspective, please allow me to elaborate 3 criteria for all countries in the world to think about Brazil. The first criteria could be the countries with a population larger than 150 million inhabitants. So we have these countries. The second criteria could be the countries with GDP higher than $1 trillion. So we have these countries. The next one, countries with area with more than 5 million square kilometers, when we have these criteria. So as we can see, we have only 3 countries that fill those requirements in the same time. We have Brazil, we have the United States, and we have China. So this represents in terms of size, scale, and wealth, how Brazil is a global privileged position alongside the most important economies in the world. Next. But why haven't we been able to profit on the such position? I'm trying to explanation. The explanation is not so simple, but I try to summarize here. Because sometimes when people used to think about Brazil, used to think about like a very big red tape. Next. Of course, that until 2016, we had a closed economy, and government at that time seems satisfied with that. We had inaccurate premises in our concession contracts, and we had also absence of a portfolio of projects, a previsibility, what we will be doing in the next years. And we're trying to correct these things, these facts we're doing now. Next, please. We're trying to cut the red tape with a well-functioned business environment, right? Going to solving all the past problems, and we have the predictability, and our portfolio will be doing the next years. We think these efforts will be going the right path, because when we saw the results, Brazil was the world's 4th destination of foreign investments in the last year. To show our commitment as a country to create a business-friendly atmosphere, I would like to mention a few of milestones on our part towards the boost investment in infrastructure starting in 2016, as I said. One of the first remark I would to say is that we have passed a new general law for regulatory agencies, raising the bar for political appointments, and resulting in stronger autonomous agencies with less political interference. This is important because when you have a strong agency, we have the role of the law, we have the contract, and the sure that contracts will be respected. And then another point I would like to remark here is our robust social security reform, with budget saving more than $200 billion, assuring our financial stability over the next decades. But we're not done yet. We're still discussing a new infrastructure debenture law with a more attractive frame for institutional and foreign investors, and a new tax law reform to simplify and reduce our tax burden. Next, please. Because we know that we know how the infrastructure will create a good scenario in Brazil, specifically in this case when you have the pandemic effects, and we will have to we need our economy growing in the next years. And we know that the implementation of our portfolio, according to several studies, will more than double our GDP growth and rates, and will multiply the numbers of new jobs created in the next decades. This is why the politicians and the policymakers now have in mind when they're doing their jobs. Infrastructure investment will boost our growth. Next, please. Talking a little how we are addressing and how we are doing these things, it's important to say that we and we know how this is important for the investors is about the legacy sentence and a pro-business environment. I talked a little about a pro-business environment, but now I will talk a little about legal centers in Brazil, because this is one of the many issues has been brought by the investors when they talk about Brazil. The first mark I would like to say here is the rule of law. In Brazil, we respect the contracts, and I can say that over the last 30 years, we never had broken a single concession contract or arbitrarily interfere in a contractor or on transpector sector. And in Brazil, so we can say the rule of law is important, and all the contracts, even in the different administrations during, as I said, the last 30 years, was respected for all the parts. Next, please. Next. Another point important here to talk is about we also know the knowledge about this resolution for suits is very important, and we addressed this problem with these efforts. The first is the Arbitration Decree. The Arbitration Decree allows the private arbitration to be used to resolve matters between administration and concessionaires. We have the Rebidding Decree to allow that contracts we have a good way to finish before the time if it's important, if it's the only way important, the only way for that contract. And then last one, please. It's important to say that we are also improving our new contracts. And this, I would like to explain that some marks with these points. At the first, we are reducing the FX risk. How we're doing this? The future contracts for toll roads, for example, we allow the concessionaires to use the variable concession fees paid during the contract as a hedging mechanism. This variable fee is equivalent to 6% of the gross revenue, but this percentage may vary according to the contract. And these payments will be deposited in escrow account, and we allow compensation of the case of FX variation for the 15 years with a tail period of another 15 years. So the variations have a bigger chance to compensation themselves. We think this mechanism will help and protect the private partners from severe short-term FX variation. In short, in a nutshell, I can say that now, and I know how is a concern about the investors, now we are sharing the FX risk because our government is eager to attract new investors. I would like to say about the green bonds. We have the contracts able to receive the green bonds, especially the railroads contracts. They are being thinking and designing, allowing to emission of the green bonds. And as I told you, we work a lot about the environmental compensation. Yes, important to note, the green bonds is working together with these measures to allow that the environmental compensations has the responsibility of the concessionaires, and this is not will be a problem for the new contracts. And we had a very serious work here improving our risk metrics to be totally clear for the investors what the risk belongs to the investors, what the risk belongs to the state. Next, please. As a result of all these efforts, I would like to show that we have been very successful in the last years. We have 27 auction assets at the last year, and even in this year, we still doing some bids, and we will increase this number with the achievements of 2020. But as you can see, we have the auctions in airports, we have auction in ports, we have auction in railways, we have auctions in toll roads, assuring the lot of number of investments and the grants to the government. Next, please. But the total portfolio, and it's important to say here, we have in reais 225 billion of rise in the planned investments for the next years for 21, 22, and I will show in the next slides how we are doing and which assets we are going to do the bids in the next year, please. As you can see here, now we show our projects pipeline, and we have the projects in 2020, we have leasings in the 6 terminals of the port. We have the one concession done with BRs 101 in Santa Catarina. We have the renewal concessions in the railroads with more investments to the sector. In the next year, we'll have the 6th round of concession of airports concession with the blocks on South, North, and Central block. I will show the picture to you, think of what they're doing, to see what we're doing in the next years. We will have leasings, port leasings in Itaqui, in Santos, we have in Vila do Conde. We have the first privatization in our companies of the transportation companies. The first privatization will be the Codesa, it's a company of the Espírito Santo. And preparing the next and most important concession we will be doing is the port of this port of the Santos in the 2022. We have several concessions in toll roads for next year. We have some roads, I will show the picture also, and we have even the concession of the railroads. Next, please. Here is important to note that the transparency is important for us. And all these assets and all the portfolio, the project portfolio is in our website in Portuguese and in English. If you point your camera to this QR code, you can you can access our projects, and you have all the information in real time. What are you doing in every assets we are trying to do in the next years. Just to give a view what are we doing in 2021 and 2022, I will show in the perspective on the next slides, please. This picture shows our project portfolio in airports. In the next year, as I told, we have the 6th round with these concessions in the North Block. You can see in blue here, with important airports like Manaus, like Tabatinga, like Porto Velho, like Boa Vista. We have another block here in the Central Block, when you see in the middle of Brazil with Goiânia and São Luís and Teresina and Imperatriz, Palmas and Petrolina. And another block very important for us, you can see here in the South Block with Curitiba and the airport of Foz do Iguaçu. It's a very important tourist destination here in Brazil, and another airports here. The total airports we'll be doing in the next year will be 22 airports, but after the 6th round we will be working, and now actually we're working the studies for the 7th round with more assets, and in this case we will have here in Brazil the connection between Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo with the airports of Santos Dumont and airports of Congonhas. Will be auctioning 2022. Next, please. At this picture, you can see our projects about our port portfolio. We have the leasing of several leasing of terminals in the next years. As I told you, you can see the ports of Vila do Conde here in the north of Brazil, in the state of Maranhão. You can see ports of Fortaleza and Natal and other ports important for us here in Brazil. And as and this picture also shows the connecting with the railroads to have a perspective how important these ports are. And the most important, as I said, we will have the privatization of the first company. You can see here in blue the port of Vitória. In Vitória is the privatization of Codesa. It's our port in Espírito Santo. Next, please. Just a view about our projects with the toll roads. We will be doing the next year the concession of the BR 163 connecting Sinop to Itaituba here in the north of Brazil. It's important for soil and go to the North Arch in Brazil. It's a corridor of soil in Brazil. We will have the concession in the BR 153 connecting Aliança Tocantins to Anápolis. Is here in the middle of Brazil. We have maybe the most important concession will be auctioned in the next year in the toll roads will be the concession of Dutra. The connection between São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro will be giving these studies to approval for our Court of Administration in Brazil called TCU, and they are at this month, and they'll be studying them. Once his approval, will be doing this bid the first semester of the next year. Next, please. Here you can see our portfolio of railways. We are almost bidding and we're publishing the documents in this year. To FIOL is the connection, as you can see, in states of Bahia, here in the northwest of Brazil, connecting Ilhéus and Caetité. And the next year, we will try to do the concession of the Ferrogrão. Is another very important here in the north of Brazil, between connecting Sinop and Itaituba, is the North Arch, as I said. And we have the renewed concessions, important renewed concessions we be working. We already done the renewed concession. You can see in blue here is about the Rumo Malha Paulista, and that at this year we have the allow of our courts to do the and renew about the Carajás, the Estrada de Carajás here, the rails to belongs to the Valley, and Vitória Minas here that allows to construct this new railway here connecting Água Boa and Mara Rosa. And at the next year, this program of renewals will be going further, and we expecting to do the renewals about the FCA, is you can see here in purple, and in the south, you can see here in green. Next. So, as I would like to show in just a few how we have a very strong pipeline with many interesting projects in ports and airports and roads and railroads. And my goal here is to demonstrate with results and facts that we are going the right path. We have a good pipeline and a safe and prosperous path to investment here in Brazil for the next year. So we hope to count with the Turkish partners to work together for us to develop this pipeline and contract with Brazil. it's safe and it's very good. And our interest rates are good. It's important to say. After I can say another other opportunity, but our IRR it's between 9 and until to 11%. So we have good contracts in here in Brazil. And that's it for today. I'll be able to answer any question. Here you can see my contact if you want to talk and ask something after the panel. I'll be keeping in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Obrigado. Thank you, Mr. Carvalho. Obrigado. Now we will have Mr. Igor Roja from ABDIP. But before, I want to say that it's very impressive list of projects in Brazil. Very exciting, and you're all lined it up. So I think they are in good track. And we will be happy to share, and I'm sure you will share these presentations with us. We will send it to all our members as well. So most important is to share the information, and then they will all decide and contact. Mr. Roja, please tell us about the ABDIP role. What is ABDIP doing? It's like RTCA. And what is your role in attracting the investments and developing infrastructure in Brazil? We talked a little bit before about your commissions you have, committees in the inside, and how you work. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Burak, for this introduction. I'd like to thank the organization team in Turkey, Luciana and Felipe Flores, and in Brazil, Jurandir Campos. I will make a very brief presentation about ABDIP, show some data, and after that we can open for discussion. Let me just put the PowerPoint presentation here. Okay, I think, okay. So again, good morning. I'm delighted to be here today in this amazing event to promote investments in Brazil. My name is Igor Rocha. I'm Director of Planning and Economics at ABDIP. ABDIP is the Brazilian Infrastructure Association. ABDIP is the biggest infrastructure association in Brazil nowadays. We cover the whole country. Although we are based in Brazil, we cover in São Paulo, we cover the whole country, all states. And the mission of ABDIP is contribute to the Brazilian economic growth and social development, right? Promoting the investment in infrastructure and expansion of our infrastructure. Our mission is also strengthen the competitiveness in the country, and of course the productiveness of the country as well, and collaborate with the public and private agents in the search for consistent solutions to enable investment. So this kind of event today make a lot of sense with our mission.
Igor, desculpe te interromper, mas se você botar no modo apresentação, o slide fica maior.
Oh, ok. Pensei que estava.
Tá bom? Desculpe aí.
Thanks, General.
Obrigado.
Thank you. And our values is ethics, transparency, critical sense, responsibility, and be able to solve problems. Recently, we developed a governance structure in the association, establishing a code of business conduct. So all our members to become a member in our association need to sign this code of conduct. Our governance structure is exactly this one. We have an executive board, an advisory board, and a CEO, right? All issues related to legislative process, all ideas, critical things, and so on are discussed in sectoral committees and also in horizontal committees, but of course also in this advisory board and even in the executive board sometimes. This is the story of ABGIB, right? ABGIB was created during the 50s, so we have 65 years. This year is our anniversary. In the beginning, since the economy was very close, right, it was mainly focusing on engineering and assembling and customer-made capital goods. After that, during the 90s, when happened the open of our country in terms of commercial and financial openness, ABGIB was open to financial institutions, law firms, private and public companies, consultancies, and also construction companies. After that, recently, after 2016, with a new wave of actions in the infrastructure sector with the PPI, for an example, ABGIB decided to also open its institution to large infrastructure users, insurance companies, investment funds, investment banks, in other words, the whole chain of infrastructure. Our committees that Mr. Burak cited are these ones, right? We have the so-called horizontal committees and also the so-called sectoral committees. The horizontal committees are these committees related to all sectors in the infrastructure sector, right? Like sustainability, finance, legal and tax, ethics, international relations, privatizations, innovations, engineering. All these are the so-called horizontal committees, and each one has a coordinator, which is in the private sector, a director of or a CEO of a big company. We also have the sectoral committees like oil and gas, urban mobility, energy, railway, roads, port, airports, all these ones, which are also focused in specific sectors and coordinated also by a CEO or a director of a big company in the infrastructure sector in Brazil. This is some data that it's good to show the landscape in Brazil, to see the problems, the gaps, and the huge opportunities that we have in the country, right? During the 70s, we invested in infrastructure in Brazil during the military government, more than 5% in terms of GDP in infrastructure. During the 80s, it dropped to 3.5% more or less. During the 90s, we had 2.3, and then we established more or less this level of investments in infrastructure in the country. When you compare Brazil to other economies, we invest much less than other emerging economies like China, Vietnam, Chile, Colombia, India. I like to put this data to compare with big economies, smaller economies with different income per capita, to show that Brazil, since we invest so much less, we also had so many opportunities to strengthen investments in the country. This is, for an example, the level of investments in terms of billions of reais. We have 123 billions of reais invested last year. And this year, these numbers that we have, the forecast will be more or less the same. Let's return here. So what we have a huge gaps in transport and logistics and sanitation. When we talk about sanitation, the new legal law that was voted in the Congress this year will push a lot the sector. We expected around 500 billions of reais investments the next 10 years. So it's good to at least double per year the expectations of investments in basic sanitation. And in transports, we also have a huge gap, and we need also at least double this number of investments. The PPI, as Fabio showed, has a very important pipeline in terms of logistics, transports, roads, railways, and so on. So very good opportunities to jump this number to a better situations. And this is the most important that I would quote, legislative initiatives to boost the infrastructure sector. So we have 7 that ABGIB we have been dealing with, right? In that committees that I showed before. We have the basic sanitation initiative that was voted this year. And we, as I said before, we have an expectation of investment above 500 billions of reais. It's a lot and extremely important for the country. We have the reform of the electric sector model, right? To promote a regulatory review to improve the capacity to make the environment for investments in this sector more friendly, both to domestic and also international investors. We have the regulation of natural gas, the securitization of some debts, some private debts to exploit the financial market and so on. Boost also the investment in the country and also try to make a better fiscal environment to the country as well. We have the hydrological risk initiative, the concessions initiative to modernize the regulatory framework for concession contracts, and of course, attract more and more investments, and the urban mobility initiative, right, to create a metropolitan transport authority to give a more institutional organization in terms of federal government, municipalities, and states. This is the most important things that I think investors need to know. ABGIB has supported the federal government, states, and municipalities in many roadshows around the world, like in Canada, England, South Korea, United States. We are always open to give support to international and domestic investors and support the federal government with such a good work that has been done in Brazil since the PPI and nowadays with Minister Tarcísio as the Minister of Infrastructure. So thank you very much for your time. I'm open to questions if needed. And thank you very much for this opportunity to present ABGIB, our efforts to support the infrastructure markets and our expectations to the Brazilian economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Rocha. Let me ask a quick question to Mr. Carvalho to continue the discussions a little bit, and after we'll move to the panel after question and answers. Some of the viewers are wondering the COVID-19 measures the government is taking. What kind of measures, are they taking? Maybe some quick cap. And also, before when we were discussing, the second question is I remember talking about this private initiative for the projects. It's a major driver of the economy. Can you mention about the private initiative for the recovery of the investments in the country? How does it work from your side?
Okay, thank you for your question, Mr. Burak. At the first about the effects of the pandemic, we know that the airport sector and the airlines are the most impacted with the effects of the pandemic. Talking about what they done here, what we done here, about the effects of this contract, talking in airports where the government postponed the payments of the grant fees and tariffs and changed the rules for changing the repayment of airline tickets. It's a matter to behave to use the companies in the airports again. And we see now that people are becoming to fly again here in Brazil. We are confident the companies and the concessionaires will recover. And also we work to rebalance the contracts, the effect contracts about the pandemic situation in the toll roads. We saw, we have in our contracts a clause that allows we rebalance the contracts in events like force majeure. Here in Brazil, force majeure is an event we can rebalance the contracts, and we are studying with the agents how we told the pandemic it's a situation of force majeure, and the agents will be responsible to the calculation about the effect. We will rebalance the contracts in toll roads and in airports. We think that is a good way. It's a good message for everybody that when we invest in Brazil, the contracts will be respected, even in this typical situation like this one.
Thank you very much. I think, as you said, this is something very unusual that we never faced, or at least our generation, maybe our grandfathers faced some situation like this, but it shows us that we need to be ready for some hiccups, and maybe we need to kind of hold our breath, for 3 to 6 months sometimes without doing much interesting times. And I think all of our contracts should be also in the future will be revised accordingly, what if scenarios maybe. Maybe for Mr. Rocha, or Rocha, having difficulty in pronouncing. Can you, this is my question, I'm wondering about the Brazilian companies, involvement in projects in Africa, in Mozambique, in Angola. Does some of your members, I know they work there, but is there a collaboration opportunity you see? I certainly see in Africa, in Portuguese-speaking countries especially.
Yeah, for sure, Burak. I think that all these opportunities are open. Our members are always seeking this kind of opportunities to diversify their investments. Some of them, of course, they are investing a lot in Brazil, but many times trying to construct partnerships to invest in other emerging economies, of course.
Very good. Thank you very much. I mean, in general, I think we talked about, we saw the general, the projects, what are in the pipeline. We will share them with our friends and colleagues. Very impressive line of projects. Brazil is a huge economy, huge country. I saw one particular city in the middle called Sinop. We have a city called Sinop in Turkey. Maybe we should get these together. When you say I'm from Sinop, you don't know if you're from Brazil or Turkey. But there are a lot of projects in railways, in highways, in ports. I know also the Turkish, some port operators are investing in Latin America now, already in Ecuador and Colombia. So I'm sure they're already interested. We will share with them as well, if they don't know the details. And then also we invite, not only Turks to go to Brazil, but also Brazilian companies to come to Turkey and this part of the world, and also Africa to cooperate. And I think there will be an very interesting session on PPP. Our colleagues are waiting there for the next panel. So I thank my panelists, Mr. Fabio Carvalho and Mr. Igor Rocha, for this nice panel. I thank you. Obrigado, teşekkürler, and how you say, vacom Deus. As we say, Allah selamet, something similar. But God bless you, and hope to see you soon, face to face, somewhere or in another webinar. And with that, Mr. Escoto, I think I turn it back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before ending this panel, we have a question from the audience addressed to Fabio. Fabio, you have already mentioned about the impact of the coronavirus in the airline sector. The question is if there is any measure being taken to restore the airline sector in Brazil.
As I said, the airline sector here in Brazil, it's a matter of about a behavior. People has to become to fly again. What we can do in the government is to show that they are doing all the measures to be safe and security way to do this. And as I said, we changed the rules of the changing of the reimbursement of airline tickets, giving more time to people reimburse the tickets and not to cancel and asking the money back as our law allows. Was important because the companies has the money in the companies and will operate when will be possible. Was a very good measure. We think the airlines will recover, as I said. And actually, when we see the movement of our airports in the last week, was a good movement. We can see signs of this recovering, and we really hope that in the end of the year we have a very better situation for the airlines company and the airport concessionaires.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabio and Igor, for your very good presentations, and thank you, Mr. Buraktalu, for your excellent moderation of this panel.
Thank you.
Now, I will give you a brief overview of what Apex Brazil can do to help you from the moment you start considering investing in Brazil through the beginning of operations in our country and all the way to the development of your company's presence in Brazil. But before that, I'd like to answer the most important question for every investor. Why invest in Brazil? First of all, because it's a continental country of 8,500 square kilometers that is very rich in natural resources. It has fertile soil and abundant water for agribusiness, many natural and energy resources, besides the largest biodiversity of the planet. Brazil has a big and diversified industrial park. The industry represents 20.9% of GDP, 70% of exports of assets and services, and 72% of private investments in research and development. Despite the pandemic, for the 5th consecutive month since May, Brazil's Industrial Confidence Index showed an upward trend. Besides being a large consumer market with 210 million inhabitants, Brazil is also a platform for exports to other markets, particularly in Latin America. The financial sector is highly sophisticated and allows strong access to debt instruments as well as domestic and foreign markets. The national legislation does not discriminate against foreign investments. Besides that, the federal government is fully committed to making the regulatory environment even more business-friendly. Brazil has the largest infrastructure portfolio in the world, as you could see with the presentations of our invitees. You can invest with legal certainty, transparency, and predictability. There are ample openings for private investment in infrastructure, since the government has planned more auctions to be held in 2020. It's important to note that Brazil was the 6th global FDI destination in 2019. And according to the US consultancy firm A.T. Kearney, Brazil is among the 25 most reliable countries for foreign direct investments. According to the Central Bank of Brazil, in the first half of 2020, the country received a total of $25.3 billion in FDI. The mission of Apex Brazil is to promote Brazilian exports, attract foreign investments, support Brazilian companies to expand internationally, provide market intelligence, provide export qualification, and promote Brazil as a global business partner. Apex has 5 regional offices in Brazil, 9 overseas offices, besides working in close coordination with 121 trade promotion sections of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Currently, Apex is supporting 14,000 companies, which are responsible for 30% of Brazilian exports. In the last 10 years, Apex supported more than 1,300 foreign companies and investment funds, which invested $26.6 billion in Brazil. Apex is the one-stop shop for foreign investors, which is linked to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and works in partnership with the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Investment Partnerships Program to promote and facilitate investments in infrastructure. Investors are supported in establishing or expanding operations in Brazil. They have our help in starting a partnership with a Brazilian company and in finding suppliers. Investors can also commit capital in Brazil through funds and companies with our advice, and they can count on Apex custom-made market intelligence for supporting their strategic decisions. Apex also supports foreign investment funds seeking opportunities for venture capital and private equity allocation in Brazil, facilitating contact with Brazilian funds, companies, and startups. Apex supports investors in the identification of suitable locations, besides providing general information on potential costs, business environment, and talent pool availability. Using an extensive network, Apex Brazil also acts as liaison between foreign investors and regulatory and local authorities. We arrange one-on-one meetings between investors and public and private local stakeholders, besides organizing investments roundtables. Apex organizes business seminars like the ones which happened in China in 2019, in India, and in the United States this year. Since the very beginning of this pandemic, Apex has a hot site for supporting Brazilian companies and foreign investors, particularly providing updates and qualified information regarding all the measures introduced by the federal government to overcome the economic crisis. You will find more information on the Invest in Brazil LinkedIn profile and also on our new investment portal, investinbrazil.com.br. You can download the investment guide to Brazil in this QR code with relevant and detailed information which will facilitate doing business in Brazil. To conclude, I'd like to note that the Brazilian infrastructure sector has been growing during this global economic downturn, and investing in infrastructure is safe despite the crisis. I'd also like to highlight that foreign investors have showed confidence in Brazil's economy in the long term because we are a resilient country which overcame other crises and will succeed again. Finally, let me state that Apex Brazil stands ready to assist Turkish companies willing to invest in Brazil and have partnerships with Brazilian companies, and that Brazil is a country of millions of people and opportunities. I'd like to remind that if you are interested in more information, we can help you in scheduling bilateral meetings through the email ibi@apexbrazil.com.br. The Apex Brazil investment team will be pleased to help you. Going forward, now I would like to call the participants of the panel that will address the main opportunities of projects in Brazil. The Special Secretary of PPI, the Investment Partnerships Program, Marta Cellier, and the Superintendent of BNDES, Investment Partnerships Structuring Division, Cleverson Aroeira. To moderate this panel, I welcome Mr. Eyüp Vural Aydin, Chairman at Istanbul Public-Private Partnership Center of Excellence. Mr. Aydin, the panel is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to moderate this valuable panel. And I think we have two speakers. One is Marta and Cleverson from PPI and BNDES. Before starting the panel, I would like to, Before start the panel, I would like to give brief information regarding Turkish PPP statistics and some information. I will cover in 5 minutes, and I would like to give some information. Is it okay? Everybody can see my screen? Yeah. Okay, my name is Dr. Eyüp Vural Aydin. I am the chairman of Istanbul PPP Center of Excellence. Istanbul PPP Center of Excellence is the sister institution of DEIK PPP Committee, which also I am chairing. And here I would like to give the numbers of Turkish completed PPP projects. You can see in last 20 years, the numbers of PPP projects in Turkey reached 242, and the project contract value is $64 billion. The project investment cost with the operational cost, it's more than $150 billion. As you can see, 165 PPP projects from 2002 to 2018 have been completed, and most of them now on the operational phase. This is the PPP investment by PPP with the public investment in Turkey, which reached 14, sometimes 15% of all public investments, but the aim of government now is increasing this ratio to 30 by 2030.
Toplam yatırımların 2030 yılında da bunun daha da ileriye taşınması gibi bir hedef söz konusu.
Projects in Turkey, which one of Turkish Istanbul third airport project, which the contract volume is $35.6 billion, which is the biggest and the largest single investment commitment ever recorded in the PPI database of World Bank so far. So now pictures from project. This is the third airport of Istanbul. These are the PPP healthcare campuses, which is the main structure of Turkish PPP story. We have a lot of PPP hospital projects. These are PPP campuses projects, which starts from 300 beds to reach 3,500 beds. The amount of this investment starts from $200 million to $1.6 billion. So these are some projects pictures, and these are the real pictures from the inside of hospitals, PPP hospitals, which I would like to show you. This is very important. This is a basic patient rooms in PPP healthcare campuses project. These are the patient rooms, and more than 40 square meters, which is above OECD standards. And all PPP hospitals have this kind of patient rooms. And these are the latest medical equipments which are using in the PPP healthcare campuses. All those hospitals invested by private parties. And now I will give you the numbers. You can see in last 10 years, with the PPP models, Ministry of Health has been completed 10,000 beds, PPP hospitals, and the aim is reaching 42,000 beds by 2030. And last 10 years, $10,000 billion invested only in healthcare campuses project in Turkey. And most of international investors and MDBs like EBRD, World Bank, IFC, Islamic Development Bank, these kind of international MDBs have been invested a lot in PPP projects in Turkey in the last 10 years. Here's what are the lessons learned from our projects, our completed and solid projects. Which is very important, institutional capacity. In 15 years, Turkish governments try to enhance institutional capacity in-house in the public sector, because when we started these projects it was in 2007, and there is a very huge lack of institutional capacity in the ministries, but nowadays we have a international standard capacity in-house in the ministries, line ministries. Legal framework. So this is very important. You know, this is the first step of attracting potential international investors to PPP projects. And what we missed, actually, I will share this presentation with all of you. What we missed during these 15 years, the public relations of these projects, because we have a lot of successful completed projects like tunnel, bridges, hospitals, roads, highway, and ports, airports, but actually the government missed the public relations of those projects. These 15 years showed us all PPP projects should start with the PR strategy to enhance the availability and visibility of those projects through a public site. So now I don't want to take much time, and I will give the floor. First of all, if you want, we will start with Marta, PPI, to listen what are the opportunities providing by Brazil market to Turkish potential investors and also international investors. So now the floor is yours, Marta, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon already in Brazil. Thank you. I congratulate Apex for this event. Very fruitful presentations until now. I'll try to share some slides with you. Let's see if it works. Yes. So let's start from the beginning. Can you see my presentation? Works?
Yes, you can see, Marta.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can see, Marta.
So a quick explanation on PPI, the Investment Partnership Program, how it works in Brazil. So we have this program to attract private investments to Brazilian infrastructure, national investment and foreign investments to different types of infrastructure. We heard Fabio just before from Ministry of Infrastructure. He already explained many of the projects we have in the pipeline of PPI. But just for you to understand the governance of the program, we have 7 ministers deciding which are the priorities for investments in infrastructure in Brazil, attracting private investments. And Minister Guedes, the Minister of Economy, today is the president of this council. And then we also have the 3 most important public banks in Brazil that participate and vote in this council, BNDES, Caixa Econômica, and also the Bank of Brazil. And what those ministers do is to recommend to President Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, which are the priorities. And then we start working on all those priorities to attract investment. So we work together with the ministries responsible for each project, with the agencies, the regulatory agencies, on the feasibility studies, on the bidding documents, the regulation concerning all those contracts. And so we have a very important role in terms of governance, coordination, monitoring, the oversight of the whole project. Each project in the PPI portfolio, and also a very important role dialoguing with many institutions inside and outside Brazilian government. So of course, we are the house for the investors in infrastructure in Brazil in terms of having always open doors to receive them and explain everything that we're doing and try to get each process even better, dialoguing a lot with all interested parties. Very important role also with the financial side, financial agent, multilateral organizations that work a lot with PPI on the structuring and after on the financing of the projects in Brazil. So IDB, the World Bank, and other very important developing agencies such as the French agency, the German agency, and many others. We have many contacts with our embassies all over the world to get to reach those investors easier. Apex is working very closely to us on this agenda. And of course, we have also an important role with Congress, Brazilian Congress, talking about the opportunities of better laws in Brazil, better regulation. So we have this reform agenda moving very fast in Brazil concerning not only the pension reform that was already approved and other reforms that are being discussed right now in Brazil, such as the tax reform, the administrative reform, but we also have many important bills on infrastructure, trying to make the whole environment better for private investments and also foreign investors. And as a good example of how this negotiation between government and Congress has been working well for infrastructure is the bill on basic sanitation that has recently been approved in Brazil, and that has completely changed the scenario to attract private investments to Brazil. And we've seen last week the results of this opening and of this better legislation that now Brazil has on the basic sanitation sector, on a very competitive bid that we had for the metropolitan region of Maceió in the state of Alagoas, with 7 different participants coming to this bid with very aggressive proposals. So we're very happy to see that when the law moves in the right direction, opening doors for private investments and making the whole environment more understandable, more transparent, then also we get to have more private investments in different sectors in Brazil. And this agenda moves forwards with very important bills that are being discussed right now, such as the gas bill in the Senate, such as the bill for the privatization of Eletrobras, our very important SOE in the energy sector in Brazil, the bill for the licensing of the projects, for railways, for PPPs. We have a bill modernizing the PPPs legislation in Brazil. So a very important agenda that we keep dialoguing a lot, government, PPI, and our congressmen to get even more investments coming to Brazil. So I guess I have the wrong presentation here, but I'll go quickly through the slides. Let me check if I can make the right one. So I mentioned about the reforms. Those are the big numbers on PPI. So since the program has been created in 2016, we have 183 projects that have been auctioned in the PPI portfolio, and that means attracting many investments to Brazil. More than $709 billion reais, sorry, more than 141 billion dollars to Brazil in long-term projects. Usually when we're talking about infrastructure, we have 20-30-year projects. Some projects are even larger, but many of them have aggressive investments in the beginning of the concession. So it's very important to understand how PPI is working even harder now to attract private investments to Brazil, considering the new challenge we have after coronavirus to create jobs and to recover economy. So something that was already a priority to Brazil before the crisis, the PPI and this attraction of investments, now after the coronavirus crisis has become even more important, and we've been working very hard on this agenda. So unfortunately, I have the wrong presentation here. Let me try to change and make the right one come to place. Let's try it again. I have an old one and I was just preparing the new one. That must be this one, sure. With the last auctions that we had. Are you seeing it? No.
Martha, we cannot see your screen.
Now it works?
Now it's okay. Now it's okay.
Sorry for that. Yeah, this is the right one. So those are the auctions that already happened this year. So of course, we had a more aggressive plan for 2020 with other auctions that we expected to have this year. And we had to postpone some auctions because of all that happened considering coronavirus. So for energy generation auctions, for example, we have postponed them for 2021. Also, the oil and gas agenda has been postponed. The airports that were supposed to happen the end of this year, we had to postpone a few months. I'll talk about it. But even though we had difficult first semester, many important projects happened, and only this year we can say Brazil will get more than $2.5 billion investments because of the auctions that happened in 2020. So we started the year with an important auction on highway, the BR-101 South Brazil, that will bring more than $680 million to Brazil only in this specific highway. It's a PPP project. Then we kept with the early extension of Rumo Malha Paulista. It's a railway project, also very intensive in capex and investments, more than $1 billion because of this renewal that happened this year. Then we had the auction of 2 important ports of cellulose in the port of Santos, 2 different terminals for cellulose, and also important results in terms of concession fee, and very competitive auction that happened in São Paulo in August, more recently. Then we advanced with the agenda of supporting subnational level. So PPI has each time is developing more projects together with the states and the municipalities. So we had 3 different auctions in street lighting projects that we have structured together with Caixa Econômica and the municipalities of Aracaju in Sergipe, Feira de Santana in Bahia, and Franco da Rocha in São Paulo. So 3 different cities that now have contracts of PPPs attracting private sector to make all the investments in street lighting. And we expect those cities to have more than $114 million investments because of those contracts. And also last week, as I was mentioning, the auction of the PPP of water and sewage in the metropolitan region of Maceió. Probably Cleverson will talk about it, the whole agenda that BNDES is developing with contracts on water and sewage all over Brazil now that we have the new legislation. And we were very impressed because it was an auction that the minimum value as a bid was around $3 million. So we were focusing a lot on investments and not on the concession fee. We wanted to make at least the $520 million investments in the region to bring the right infrastructure of water and sewage to population. But then we were impressed with the 7 proposals and a winning bid of $402 million. So very impressive results that show us also how challenging and also how interesting the portfolio of basic sanitation in Brazil will be in the future. And we believe that most mayors, Brazilian mayors and governors, after seeing the results of this PPP and this auction last week, will also want to move forward with this agenda, which is excellent for us and which will probably bring to Brazil more than $150 billion investments only in terms of basic sanitation. So our current portfolio in PPI, today we have 154 projects in terms of federal level and other projects that I'll show you in terms of states and municipalities. So see how diversified is our portfolio. We have many PPPs opportunities in terms of ports, airports, railways, and highways. Also in the energy sector with generation, transmission, oil and gas. But we have been working each time harder to try to bring new PPPs to different sectors in Brazil. So we've been diving in the PPPs of national parks and forest agenda together also with BNDES in many projects. And this is an important agenda to make the partnerships with the private sector a way of finding more investments to protect our environment. You've probably heard a lot about the fires in Brazil and how challenging it can be to take care of such a big region, such big forests and parks that we have. And in some periods of the year when it's very hot, we have this challenge with the fires and all the equipments we need and all the money and the technology and the intelligence to fight those fires. And we believe that the agenda of PPPs of national parks and forests, bringing private investors to Brazil, will also help us protect even more our environment. We also have different projects on irrigation, which is something new for us. On urban mobility, we have an intense privatization agenda going on in Brazil as well. So selling enterprises such as Eletrobras, I mentioned, the Brazilian energy SOE, but also the National Post in Brazil, which is a very challenging project since we have more than 100,000 people working for the National Post in more than 5,000 cities in Brazil. So very, very important public enterprise that we're structuring the feasibility studies to get a privatization done by the end of next year. Mining projects as well, communication, we have the 5G auction that will happen next year, also important auction to bring investments in telecommunication to Brazil. And projects in tourism and subnational level. The next slides will detail a bit of those projects. So Fabio mentioned about the airports. We had to delay a bit the auction that was first supposed to happen in December, and then we had to review some of our feasibility studies because, of course, of the impact of coronavirus. The airports was the most affected sector for us in terms of portfolio, in terms of infrastructure in Brazil. If we have to point which sectors suffered more, it would be the airports. But Brazil gave very quick and important responses to the airport sector as well, in terms of partners that are already operating in Brazil, and we already have many PPPs in Brazil in the airport sector. We had provisional decrees and many bills that were voted in Congress to postpone obligations and payments from the concessionaires, to make available standstill options for also the contracts that were happening together with our banks. So we have taken care to sit with all the investors that are already operating in Brazil and infrastructure, understand how impacted they were because of coronavirus, and try to rebalance the contracts and to make sure they could still go through this difficult period and then recover. And we also had to review some of our studies for the next auctions of airports. This has already been done. Now our court, accounts court is analyzing all the feasibility studies that we sent to them, and we expect to publish the final bidding documents in the beginning of next year and have the auction probably 90, 100 days after that. So 3 different important blocks, a mix of big airports with smaller airports. Each block has some capex investment that it has already been forecasted, number of passengers, and more information, detailed information that we can send to those that are interested in those PPPs. In railways as well, a very extensive list of projects that we've been structuring together with the Ministry of Infrastructure. So FIAL, the railway in the state of Bahia, has works being done by the public enterprise right now, but we expect to have an auction happening in the beginning of next year for finalizing the works and operating this new railway together with the port of Ilhéus. So a $510 million investment that we expect will happen soon in Brazil, since the feasibility studies are already being analyzed also at Brazilian Accounts Court. And since we're dialoguing a lot with the court for a few months already, we believe we'll have this approval soon from this railway. Ferrogrão is a greenfield project that we have sent the studies, the feasibility studies, to the court just more recently. It's a almost 1,000 kilometer greenfield railway that will help bring crops from Mato Grosso to Pará, to the state of Pará, the port of Meritituba, so making the whole transportation of grains more efficient, more competitive, with less accidents, less pollution, and needing less time to go through all those kilometers to also help our exports in Brazil. And we keep on going with different renewals of projects. The Federal Court of Accounts has already approved the renewal of the railways of Vale. So Estrada de Ferro Carajás, North Brazil, and also the Vitória Minas have already been approved, and we'll be signing this contract in the next weeks probably. And as a counterpart for those contracts renewal, we'll have the FICO railway, a new railway from the state of Mato Grosso to the state of Goiás, that will be constructed by Vale and then operated by a new concessionaire in a PPP project that will happen also probably next year. So in terms of highways, you can see on this slide how challenging it is. The country is very big, and of course we have the need to invest in many highways in Brazil to make them more safe, and also the time of the travels less demanding, and we believe we'll need many private investments in this sector, since the public sector has been struggling to make investments in Brazil. So we have many important projects happening. Probably the first two auctions we'll have in the beginning of next year are the BR-163 here, very close to the Ferrogrão project, so also going from Mato Grosso to Pará. This is a 10-year concession because we didn't want to have the concession too long because of the project of the new railway. So after this 10-year PPP, we'll be able to evaluate better the effects of the railway on the highway. And the next one will be this BR-153, 080 from Goiás, the state of Goiás to the state of Tocantins, a very long highway, also 850 kilometers. And those feasibility studies are already in our federal Court of Accounts for a few months, so we believe we'll have the approval soon. And then next year, many projects to come. You can see here Nova Dutra as a very important project. We know since it's linking the state of Rio to the state of São Paulo, a very competitive bid probably will happen. And the CapEx numbers are also very important, $3 billion in this highway, with the expectation of the bid happening on the second semester last year. In terms of ports, we have many terminals already being structured for auctions that will happen between this year and next year. So in December, the 17th, will be in the stock exchange market in São Paulo for the bids of the opportunities in the port of Paranaguá, South Brazil, and also the port of Maceió and the port of Aratu in Bahia, two different projects. So we'll have 4 terminals in one section in São Paulo in December. We're structuring also the PPP of the whole port of the administration for the port of Vitória, Codesa. Something new in Brazil, because we are used to do PPP of port terminals, but not the whole port. So this is something new for us, a PPP of the whole port together with the privatization of the company, Codesa. Those feasibility studies are ready. We are probably going to open for public consultation in the next weeks. And then we have also the Port of Santos and Port of Santos São Sebastião that we have hired consultants together with BNDES to develop those feasibility studies, and this auction must happen in 2022. So those are very, very important projects, since the Port of Santos is the largest port of Latin America. We know how competitive also this auction must be. And the Port of Itajaí has entered our portfolio most recently in South Brazil, Santa Catarina. We're also starting the feasibility studies now. So I'll move fast on the energy sector, since we had to postpone so many projects for 2021, not only because of coronavirus, but also because of the oil price. We had many auctions last year in the oil and gas sector in different types of contracts, PPPs, sharing agreements with Petrobras. We had the transfer of rights of Petrobras also that happened last year in 2 very important blocks, and that brought massive amounts of bonuses to federal governments last year, and also that will bring many investments to Brazil in this sector in the next years. And we keep on moving, structuring the 17th round of concession, that is a PPP contract, and also the transfer of right of Petrobras of the blocks that haven't already been transferred. In terms of energy generation, we had to postpone the auctions for 2021, so we'll have important generation opportunities next year. And the auctions in Brazil have been each time more focused on green projects, so energy coming from the sun, from the wind power plants. Northeast Brazil have been making the whole portfolio of energy opportunity in Brazil each time more sustainable. We'll have an important auction of transmission lines in December. Very important auction, $1.5 billion investments expected from this auction that will happen the 17th. The 17th, the transition lines, 17th December, and the 18th, the port terminals. So it will be an important week for us in the stock exchange market in São Paulo. We also have mining opportunities. Those projects in Brazil have been waiting for so long. We spent 40 years, 40, not 14, 40 years without advancing in the PPPs and the auctions for mining opportunities in Brazil. So last year, finally, we had an important bid for the state of Tocantins, a project in the state of Tocantins. And now we expect to have this mine in Miriri, a phosphate mine, and a copper mine in Bom Jardim happening this year or the beginning of next year. We're just expecting the authorization of our Federal Court of Accounts. We have many parks opportunities, as I mentioned. Those are being structured right now. The parks South Brazil, Serra and Serra Geral, Aparados da Serra and Serra Geral, will publish the bidding documents probably next week. The Ministry of the Environment is responsible for this publishing of documents, and then we expect to have the auction this year. So a very important start for our portfolio of parks, and then we keep on moving with very other important opportunities such as Foz do Iguaçu in Paraná. Every time I show those slides, I say if we don't conquer an investor, we conquer a tourist, because it is amazing how beautiful all those places are also for visitation. We have forests for recreation in South Brazil, also PPP, and something different is also PPPs for forests with managing concession contracts for sustainable management. So this is something new for PPI. It's our first concession of forests for sustainable management that we're structuring. The forest of Humaitá in the Amazon has already finished the feasibility studies, and we have sent the bidding documents for our Federal Court of Accounts. Then I'll talk a bit about the projects that we're helping the states and the municipalities. I'll move fast so that Cleverson can talk also more about the basic sanitation projects. Just for you to understand how diverse this portfolio is, we have public lighting projects happening, and we expect to have at least 2 or 3 more auctions this year of projects that are being structured, such as Campinas, such as Belém. We have projects in terms of water distribution, treatment, sewage, and also solid waste management. The projects of solid waste are PPPs. Some of them are for one city, such as Teresina in Piauí, so the private partner will have to collect, transport, and treat all this waste, receiving a tariff for those services. And other projects are cluster of cities in Brazil, such as Convale in Minas Gerais. We have 8 different cities working together in this contract. We expect to have this auction happening this year. We had the public hearing just recently, so we're moving fast with this project in Minas Gerais, and we have other projects happening. The NDS for sure will detail more the projects on basic sanitation. The other states that they're developing feasibility studies. So the Rio de Janeiro projects probably will be the next. And it's huge in terms of capex, in terms of people, 13 million people getting services of treated water and sewage in the state of Rio de Janeiro. Then also the states of Acre, Amapá are moving forward with feasibility studies. And I saw in the former presentation the PPPs of hospitals in Turkey, and I was very interested because we're structuring right now together with BNDES one PPP of hospital in the city of Guarulhos, focused on children and teenagers. It's a hospital focused on children and teenagers. But just yesterday, we were having an important meeting with BNDES and IFC to move forward with this agenda. We really believe Brazil has great potential for PPPs of hospitals, and we want to do it on a larger scale. So we'll probably come up with many other opportunities in the next months in this sector. And congratulations for the pictures and amazing projects I just saw in Turkey. We really expect to get to do something similar in Brazil, and we need it. We need this type of investment. Daycare opportunities also, we're helping Brazilian states and cities to bring private investors to develop new daycares. We have a lack of infrastructure for children in Brazil. Only 1/3 of Brazilian children that need the infrastructure get the infrastructure in their cities. So we really need to move forward with this agenda as well. And even PPPs of prisons, we're trying to review the whole system in Brazil with the opportunity of work, prisons together with industries to make sure prisoners get the opportunity to study, to learn a job, and to work in the prison. So very important projects as well. Since Cleveson will talk after me, I won't talk so much about the basic sanitation projects because I'm sure he'll detail other opportunities. And I'll just move to the last slides showing the auctions that we expect to happen the next weeks and months. So we have the renewal of the railways I mentioned that must be signed this year with many investments to happen in the railway sector. The transmission line auctions in December. We'll have an auction of oil and gas. I didn't mention it's a smaller projects for opportunities online of projects that didn't happen in the past. Also the port terminals I mentioned, the mining opportunities I mentioned. We have a fishery terminal in the portfolio as well. It's the first fishery terminal, Cabedelo, that we expect to have the auction this year. The parks and forests I mentioned, and the public lighting opportunities of Belém, Sapucaia do Sul, and Campinas this year. We expect to have the concession of water and distribution in Cariacica in Espírito Santo this year as well, and the solid waste PPP in Minas Gerais. And I won't mention all the projects of this slide, but look at the size of our challenge for 2021. We have many port terminals happening, highways, railways, PPPs on defense and security, airports, not only the 22 I mentioned, but also 2 important renewals. New bids actually, the concessions of Viracopos in Campinas and São Gonçalo do Amarante. 7 fishery terminals, 5 parks, the opportunities on oil and gas, the whole privatization agenda, very challenging, but also very important for Brazil, many enterprises that are moving forward on feasibility studies this year, and we expect the auctions to happen next year. Mining rights, irrigation, 5G, even a subway in Minas Gerais, and all the opportunities for basic sanitation and public lighting here. So this presentation will be available to you. Sorry if I took too long, and thank you so much.
Marta, thank you very much for this interesting presentation and lots of information regarding PPP projects in Brazil. Actually, what I would like to tell, there are a lot of opportunities in the market. And in Turkey, you know, many sectors, we have very, very experienced companies who are very interested in Brazil market, and maybe we should contact with Brazilian companies and Turkish companies in terms of PPP projects. What I would like to tell, also Turkish companies are very, you know, experienced working with MDBs like IFC, EBRD, World Bank, and these MDBs in terms of PPP projects, development of PPP projects. So that would be a very good opportunity for Brazilian market to work Turkish companies in the PPP projects. Before I give the floor to Cleverson. There's a very good question. You know, when we are talking about PPP projects, we should stress on the bankability of the project. This is the most important point of the project. So we need bankable PPP projects. So the question comes like, in order to create more bankable projects in the Brazilian market, do you foresee any kind of governmental incentives, governmental guarantee mechanism, and maybe currency indexation or some inflation indexation, these kind of tools, do you foresee or do you use for PPP project in the market?
Okay, so usually for inflation, what we have are adjustments on tariffs. So the contract usually say that each 5 years or each year, depending on the contract, you'll have a review of the tariffs considering some inflation index. So we usually don't have inflation as something that preoccupies our investors. For currency, this is more pointed as a problem, depending on the project, when it's very intensive in CapEx and when the investor wants to get the leverage from another country. So when it's financed on another currency, then it really can be an issue. Because usually our contracts, they have expenditure on local money and revenue on local money. So it's more about the financing on foreign currency that can bring some not adjustment to the process. So as Fabio mentioned earlier on his presentation, we've been working on some sectors with some alternatives for the risk, the FX risk, such as in highways. We have created this separate account where part of the revenue that is paid for government annually will go to this account instead of going to government. And this account can be used to rebalance the contract if there is a relevant change in foreign exchange rate. So for those projects that are being financed with money from other countries, then we can use this mechanism. This is something new that we're testing for the next highway projects in Brazil as an answer to this type of preoccupation. But right now, what we can say is that somehow the projects are cheap in Brazil because of the currency. So it's also a good opportunity to come and invest in Brazil.
So last question, it's a technical, but it's a very good question. You know, when we are talking about the $100 million projects, I mean, not small scales, some medium and big scale projects, we need, you know, minimum equity requirements. So in Turkey, for example, if we are talking about $1 billion project, 20% equity should come from the private party, which is $200 million. Is there any minimum equity requirements in Brazil for the PPP projects?
Depends on the project, but usually yes. Some projects have a smaller percentage of equity requirement, others have a larger percentage. So also in highways, what we've been developing is a different mechanism, because before we had bids on lower tariffs in Brazil. So who was asking less for the tolls on highways? This is how the biddings occurred. And then we realized that sometimes bidders were very aggressive, tolls went very low, and then the investor didn't have the amount of money needed to make all the investments of the PPP contract. So we changed the mechanism. We start with the lower toll, but then there is a value that cannot go lower. And then we change the bidding mechanism to who pays more. And this paying more has to be paid directly in the signing of the contract. So this also is a form of showing that the investors have equity. In some contracts, this payment goes directly to the society. So those are investments that will be made in the projects. And in other contracts, we have this upfront payment going to treasuries, to governments. So it's just a way to show that the investors can pay government directly, and because they have obligations of investments during the contract, if they can pay government upfront and make the obligations, it's also a way to show that they will be able to move forward with the obligations. So it all depends on the sector. Each sector has different rules.
Thank you, Marta. Maybe last suggestion from my side. You know, in Turkey, 200 PPP project has been completed very successfully, and most of them has a governmental guarantee mechanism. Some of them treasury guarantees, some of them shadow guarantees, some of them other guarantee mechanisms. So maybe we can have another discussion which is focusing on governmental guarantees, how we did it in Turkey. So it's maybe we can organize such kind of very small discussion session, and we will focus on governmental guarantees, how we can make bankable PPP projects in Brazil in very soon. Okay, thank you very much for your great presentation. And now the floor is yours, Cleverson.
Thank you.
You're on mute. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ryuk, and I also thank you, Apex, for this initiative. I praise for this opportunity of exchange some experience, and I'm glad to hear from you about the experience in Turkey in many contracts of PPP in different sectors. So I think we really could cooperate and exchange some information, because although we have a lot of experience in some sectors, we are still in the beginning for other ones. So for sure, I think we can exchange some experience and learn with each other in this case. I am responsible for the PPPs and concessions structuring division in BNDES. BNDES is more well known by its lending arm. But actually we have also this division to help the public sector to structure PPPs and concession. So here we are talking about a role that is before the lending role of BNDES. This is the role of public sector advisory service. And here we work together with PPI and also Ministry of Infrastructure to generate opportunities of investment and to structure projects in many sectors of infrastructure. I have a presentation also. I will try to be brief, just to show you more detail the sectors in which we are working on. I think you can see my screen, but if it is not working, please tell me. And just to show you here, I have some information about the portfolio of opportunities, and as Marta mentioned, I would like to bring a little more detail about the sanitation program. I also have some information about a highway program and ports program, but maybe I can, for sure, I will share this presentation for your reference and let's leave some time to questions in the end of the presentation, instead of having a long presentation here. So this is just to detail this role of BNDES as an advisor to the public sector. So we are working on this side of in the sell side, in the origination of projects, in project preparation, and also to help the public sector to promote those projects. So we have in Brazil, probably as in many other countries, different level of maturity among the governmental entities. So we have the federal government that is has large experience in PPPs and concessions and has a very technical staff. But on the other hand, we have the states in which the teams, they are not at the same level. We have states like São Paulo in Minas Gerais with a very professional team, but also, we have also some other states that are not well structured yet. So the idea here is to help all of them to originate opportunities and partner with the private sector to foster investments in infrastructure. We have also some projects with some cities and municipalities, helping them. And together with PPI and Caixa Econômica and other multilateral, we form what we have been calling the factory of projects in Brazil. So we are here to prepare as much projects as we can to generate opportunities of investment. And BNDES has its traditional role of financing institutions. So we are the largest infrastructure lender in Brazil. So we continue supporting infrastructure investments, mainly in sectors capital intensive like sanitation, roads, and ports, such as sectors. But today we are talking about the left part of the slide, the origination of projects. And in our portfolio, we have around 30 projects, actually more than 30 assets, actually. In the left side, the economic infrastructure projects, we have 6 packages of highways. I'm not talking here about 6 concessions, but 6 big projects, in some of them with much more than 5, 6 new concessions. As you probably saw in Marta's presentation and also in Fabio's presentation in the beginning of the event, the highway sector represents nowadays probably the sector with more opportunities of investment in Brazil. And most recently, we had a transformation in this sector in Brazil. We need to attract investors for this sector. Because due to the fiscal constraints, we have more toll roads being brought to the market. We have more projects, and we need more investors to move forward with those opportunities. Also, Marta showed investments in ports. In the right side, sanitation is our top priority sector. BNDES has been promoting and focusing its energy and resources to transform the sanitation infrastructure in Brazil. This is because our indicators in sanitation are really bad. We have more than 100 people without access to sewage treatment yet. So we really need to invest a lot in this sector. And I would like to talk today more about sanitation and maybe highway imports, sectors in which we have opportunities of investments, and we need investors to be here and to bring more capital and to bring more competition, since we have a lot of auctions expected in the next years. So in case of highways, just to draw your attention, this package in Minas Gerais state, we are talking about $1 billion in investment, so 300,000 kilometers. If we take all the roads in BNDES's portfolio, they represent 14,000 kilometers. So if we consider that Brazil has 20,000 kilometers of concessions, so it is more than 50% of new concessions in Brazil in the next years. So this is the largest program of highway concessions in the history of Brazil, actually. In case of ports, although we have private participation in terminals and cargo handling, we still have the port authorities in Brazil, state-owned companies, all of them, basically. And now we have some pilot projects to transform this reality and to bring Brazilian ports to the international benchmarks, like the European and Asian ports. So we are here, we see, like if we take Port of Santos, for instance, Port of Santos is the biggest port in Latin America, and it is still managed by a state-owned company. When we have a state-owned company in Brazil managing an asset like this, the state-owned company has restrictions, has legal constraints, for instance, to promote procurement process. The state-owned companies, they are targeted by audit courts. They have constraints to hire people, to sign contracts. So a lot of bureaucracy that makes them less efficient. So if we bring the private sector to be the port authority in Brazil, to manage the ports in Brazil, we believe we will have an increase of efficiency in the level of investments. And in case of ports, we are now beginning this program with these two ports here, Vitória. This is the pilot project, actually, the first one. And the main port in Brazil, Port of Santos, will be the next one. So the public auction is forecast to 2021 and 2022. So there is time to interact with the market. There is time to move forward with the studies, and mainly to attract investors to follow and monitor those studies and to bring suggestions and comments and to improve the project to make it ready for the public sector, the private sector. So here, highways and ports are sectors in which we will have a lot of opportunities, and we still have time if the Turkish companies want to be here in Brazil and to follow those opportunities. We are here to create this environment and create these opportunities in order to bring the companies. In case of sanitation, and I would like to spend more time talking about those projects. Actually, we are more advanced here because we started those projects 3 years ago. And now a lot of them are mature, like the project in Alagoas, the metropolitan region of Maceió. We successfully awarded this project last week to the private sector. So it was the first in this portfolio. And actually this portfolio is increasing. So there will be more opportunities in sanitation. Actually, I will show in a few slides, mostly of the sector, sanitation sector in Brazil is still operated by the public sector. So here we have a lot of opportunities in many states because with this project of Alagoas, for instance, we have the first benchmark of a regional project, a project that comprehends more than 10 cities. And this is the first in our portfolio because Acre, Amapá, and Rio de Janeiro, and Rio Grande do Sul, all of them are similar projects with 20, 30, 60 cities. So they are large-scale projects. And if we take all those projects together, we are talking about 30 million people that will have the service provided in better conditions than they are provided nowadays. And almost 10 billion, more than $10 billion if we consider Minas Gerais, that is still in the beginning. So sanitation for sure is the sector in which we are putting more energy and in which we will have more auctions over this year. We have an auction next week, for instance, for Cariacica. And in the beginning of 2021, we will have Rio de Janeiro, Acre, Amapá. So we have a series of auctions. And besides this charge, we are negotiating with the state of Bahia, the state of Paraíba, and the state of Rondônia to bring more projects to this portfolio. So here, this is very interesting if you are following this sector to be prepared, because many opportunities will be brought to the market. So public lighting, Marta mentioned, are smaller projects, but very important ones, because they are connected to energy efficiency, and they are also the base for smart cities. So each year, more and more cities in Brazil will be attracting private sector to renew the park of public lighting. So those 7 projects are the projects in the portfolio of BNDES, and I'm sure that we will have dozens of projects in these sectors in the next years, because now we have a successful track record of street lighting and public lighting, and many cities will adhere to this technology. Our sanitation portfolio, in this chart, this is interesting to understand how is sanitation in Brazil. We have here a chart that shows in the lower part, most of states have shortage of sewage treatment. So a lot of them has already a good condition in water provision, but in case of sewage collection and treatment, there is a huge gap to be filled in Brazil. And we focus our portfolio in this quarter here in the right side below, in which we see a lot of states with reasonable water provision, but a very poor sewage collection and treatment. And we can see here, for instance, Bahia, Rio de Janeiro, Alagoas, and many states here that are in our portfolio, and more states are coming to be part of this program. And this is the reality of sanitation in Brazil. 70% of the operation are done by state-owned company. Only 10% of the operation are performed by private sector. So it shows the size of opportunity here. A country of 200 million people with 90% of the sanitation provided by the public sector. And it was already proved that it is not working well, because half of the population don't have access to sewage treatment. 1/3 of the population don't have access to treated water. So here we are starting a big program with the support of federal government, PPI, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Regional Development, and a lot of states to transform the sector. We expect more than between 100 to $150 billion in investments in the next decade to meet the requirements of the new bill that was issued this year. We have targets, clear targets, to bring the service to 99% of water provision and 90% of sewage collection and treatment. And to achieve this target, we will need for sure the private sector and hundreds of billions of dollars in investments. The awareness about this need is raising each day. The politicians, they are embracing this issue as a priority. So the lawmakers, ministries, so the political class in Brazil is committed to this transformation. and the governors now, they are beginning new projects. So it means that we will have a lot of projects in the coming years. And just to show you our portfolio, and I will share this presentation with you, in which you can see in detail each project. Just to mention, Alagoas was awarded last week. Sorry. Cariacica, the auction is next week. Rio de Janeiro, bid documents we will issue this year. And Rio de Janeiro, I will spend a little 2 minutes talking about this project, because this is not the largest project in sanitation sector. This is the largest concession in Brazil in our portfolio. So this is a very big project. And Amapá and Acre are also those two projects very interesting, because the governors, they are committed. We have approval from most important cities, and we will start public hearing in a few weeks to bring the projects to the market. So companies that are interested in operate sanitation, invest in sanitation in Brazil, we'll see these projects in the beginning. We will have opportunity to be part of those projects. This is the main dates here. So as I said, Alagoas was awarded, Cariacica next week, and Rio de Janeiro, Amapá, and Acre will be the next opportunities. Rio de Janeiro, the bid documents is still this year, probably. Amapá and Acre in the beginning of next year. Alagoas, I think that now this is just celebration. The idea here is to share with you what the achievement we had, and the idea is to replicate this benchmark to the other states. And Cariacica is also, this is a smaller one, but we are, as we have the auction next week, this is also to celebrate. And Marta, I just got the information that 7 proposals were presented to this auction. So probably we will have the same success we had in Alagoas. We are happy to see that many companies are mobilizing to be part of this. And Rio de Janeiro State, if I can bring a little more detail about this project. So this is, as you know, one of the most important states in Brazil. And although this is an important state, the sewage and the water treatment in Rio is very bad, actually. We have 44% of the sewage treated. So it means that almost 60% of the sewage in the state of Rio de Janeiro, it is not treated. It goes to the nature. So in a state with beautiful places, with a tourist state, so it doesn't make sense continue with this situation. And to transform this reality, the size of the investment is really significant. We are talking about 30 billion reais of investment, so $6 to $7 billion of investment. And how we did this? We will have 4 concessions in Rio. This is not only one concession. This is because the city of Rio de Janeiro generate 80% of the revenues in this case. The city, the Rio de Janeiro city has 6 million people. So much people are here, and the average of income, the higher average of income in the state are here in the city of Rio. So we split the city in 4 parts, the city of Rio. And each part of the city is together with many cities to form a block. So we will have 4 blocks in the state of Rio. Each of them will be a new concession. And together, the blocks, they represent almost $7 billion. But actually, we have one block of $1 billion, another one of 3 billion. So different sizes and actually different profile of investments. So this is interesting because we can attract different kind of companies for here. So all of them are big, actually, but as you can see, the blue one, a lot of states spread it out, a lot of cities spread out of the state, together with part of the city of Rio. So this purple one is the more populous region, and the red one is the south of state, and the orange one is the part of the state that is near the interior of the east of the state. So here we developed a project to 64 cities. Actually, almost 50 cities approved the project. It represents 90% of the population. The idea here, we are in the last part of the project, making some adjustments, interacting with the market, and the idea here is to issue the tender documents probably end of October, beginning of November. And the documents will be available during 3 months, 100 days. The projects will be available to all the companies in the market. And then we are here available to discuss and to present the projects in detail to attract investors, because in case of in sanitation in Brazil, as I mentioned, only 10% is operated by the private sector. And actually we have 5 important companies in Brazil that can operating sanitation, that can be players of those projects. We need to attract foreign investors and more competitors to this sector because projects like Rio de Janeiro, the size of the project is very significant, and we have much more besides this one. We have Acre, we have Amapá in a few months. So here, the key message is we have space to new investors, and the IRR of those projects are very attractive. This is because we are in the beginning of the transformation of the sector, and considering that there are still few investors, so we are developing projects with conservative assumptions in order to have a lot of competition. So this is the target here. And because of this, the projects, they are offering very attractive opportunities of return. So I would like to just to show you that this presentation has more information about Amapá State, Acre State, and in the last part of the presentation, I will bring here the roads and ports program. But I think that maybe I can share the presentation and be available to answer questions or to arrange specific meetings if you want to do so. Thank you for this opportunity again.
Thank you very much, Cleverson, for full of information and for your great presentation. And before I will end up the project, the moderation, I will give the floor to Roberto. But I would like to thank a special thank you for the idea owner, organizer, and the people who made it possible. So I hope this will be a good start between Brazilian and Turkish companies. And the floor is yours, Roberto. Thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edin, for your moderation. And thank you very much, Marta and Cleverson, for your excellent presentations with a lot of details. I'd like to stress that there is plenty of opportunities in Brazil that are spread out across the country, as you could see. And I'd like to note that the role of BNDES is not only financing by structuring the projects and promoting the opportunities. So thank you very much. The panel was very good. Thank you. Before the end of this event, I would like to stress that Apex Brazil, in partnership with several institutions, plan a series of digital events with focus on attracting investments for infrastructure. The next event will be on October 20th, and will present the opportunities of investments in ports in Brazil. As Marta Cellier mentioned, there are many opportunities in this sector. And we also will talk about the regulatory and legislative transformation that the Brazilian government has made to improve the business environment in this segment. More information can be obtained soon on the Apex Brazil website, apexbrazil.com.br.
LinkedIn profili de var.
Medias. I'd like to say that Brazil has many opportunities, and we saw that the Turkish industry has many companies with experience in operating abroad and in experiencing in having a partnership with other companies, local companies. So we had only 2 webinars focused on different countries, one with United States, because this country is the largest investor in Brazil, and with Turkey, because we recognize that Turkey and Brazil can improve the commercial and investment relations. So let's work together in this direction. Thanks to all of you who joined us today. SOC the secure Ederim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Obrigado.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.